Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and in this video, we're going to be talking about Acheron versus Aventurine live on Twitch as well. If you want to join us live, feel free to join us at twitch.tv/EODGamer. But in this section, we want to mention who is better for your account personally, because everyone's account is different. If you want my personal bias, my personal opinions, I'll leave it right at the end of this video. But for the majority of this video, we're going to be talking about the categories purely logically and unbiased for each and every single one of them. So let's first things first, start off with current value. Today, if you were to pull these characters, what exactly do you get from your account? One is a DPS, one is a sustain. Obviously, it's like, if you need more DPS, you go one. If you need one more sustain, you want to go one. But that's not very useful in the grand scheme of things. So let's take a look, top-down approach of all the different team compositions you have in the game and see what are you trying to exactly build. Aventurine, yellow box you can see, around the yellow ring. That's where Aventurine plays more into. Red box here, hyper carry here, that's where Acheron plays more into. And in the green categories, you see this DOT and debuff category here in the middle section. That's where they kind of like overlap in the team compositions that you're trying to build. So everyone's style is different. Everyone's looking to beef up a certain section of their roster. For versatility's sake, I think Aventurine plays into more different meta styles in the game right now, whereas Acheron creates like her own meta style where you want to like build the team around her. Aventurine, on the other hand, is like you build the team, he builds around the team. So it's a very, very different kind of playstyle as you are forming your team compositions. But generally, this is the overall arcing thing. Why is DOT also dotted out is because technically, one of Acheron team compositions for any of you E0 players might be a duckdragon, which DOT Acheron kind of build, which means you are involving with Kafka, you're involving with Black Swan as well. So very, very nice combo between all of them. Aventurine, on the other hand, plays into DOT only because trend of universal market is like kind of there. Again, I know new players, free-to-play players, you might not have their light cone, so I've just put it in dots, not anything concrete or anything. So they both kind of go there, but these are really the teams that they're going into. In my opinion, if you are a newer player into the game, depending on what your roster is, if you already have other DPSs that are the top meta, for example, the two that are very, very strong other than Acheron is Fei Xiao, you have Firefly. As long as you have like 2 out of 3, the last one is like kind of a plus, kind of optional. In that case, you will lean more towards the sustain character like Aventurine, in my opinion. And for example, if you are on the flip side, you have a lot of sustain already and you have no DPSs because you have always been told collecting sustains, collecting supports is the way to go, but you have no one to dish out the damage and you're struggling at the DPS front. What do I mean by that? Let's say you have a limited sustain like Lingsha, you have Fu Xuan, you have other characters in the game already like Ho Ho and stuff, Luo Ca to some extent too. You don't really need a second sustain or a third sustain in that fact because you might have E6 Gallagher already well built. In that case, probably Acheron might be shifting towards a little higher priority. So I would say in terms of current value, it really determines on your account state that you have. If you already have tons of sustain, like all really, really well-rounded, you have many limited sustains already, I think it tilts more in Acheron's favor. If you already have your break teams, you have your follow-up teams very well invested and you want to play in those fields, Aventurine likely plays more into that field because Aventurine plays very nicely together with Fei Xiao. Not so much Firefly, but if you play very well with one of your main teams, that's already very fantastic. I'll give this category a draw in the current game state. I would argue they are both fantastic on even grounds at this point. But notice there are many characters on screen as well. And more importantly, we want to talk about the next category, which is alternatives. So pulling for characters that benefit your account right now is really, really great. But how do they fare up against their competition? Because if you already have a Nike shoe, you have an Adidas shoe, you don't really need another sports shoe, do we? Do we actually need another sports shoe? I have no idea. But let's say you're pulling Acheron and you want to know the alternatives to her. There are mainly a few types of alternatives, and let's talk about the most obvious ones is the meta 3 DPSs in the game. We have them on screen as well. We have Fei Xiao, you have Firefly, and you have Acheron. I'm going to talk a bit about all 3 of them and like talking a bit about which is better mainly for your account. In my opinion, the most expensive out of them in order to like get her running is probably going to be Acheron because when she really pops off is with multiple Eidolons, with her signature. She doesn't have too many free-to-play light cone alternatives compared to the other characters in the game. So if you have resources, you have saved out a really long time, E2S1 Acheron is probably the most impressive out of the other 2 when you compare the differential between E0, S0 of the respective character and how much they are upgraded. Fei Xiao Firefly works really well at much lower investment already, so you don't get that huge jump in value. So bigger spenders, you will feel a huge bump with Acheron. That's definitely that. Fei Xiao, Firefly, don't want to talk too much about the comparisons, but these are the 3 meta teams right now. And in the current game state, one will argue that Acheron is like the lowest out of all of them in terms of meta at E0, S0 on the flip side if you are like a slightly smaller spender. So I want to just give that plain and simple for you to make your decision making. Will Acheron come into the game even more? It really depends whether there's more nihility characters being added into the game. But from what we've seen, from what we feel, maybe they're going down the route of maybe more break focus. So it does favor something else rather than Firefly. These are the 3 meta teams, so it's really just revolving around the 3 of them. Another point is, what about if you want to focus on lightning breaking? So one flip side is like you're talking about meta DPS. Other thing is like you want to cover lightning coverage. There are actually a lot of lightning characters that cover lightning in the game. You have characters like Kafka, who I just pulled out of my head right here. So you have Kafka here, you have Serval, who's like a 4-star. You have Jingyuan, who's also great in lightning coverage. So many characters and very, very different play styles. All of them play like into lightning break already. And if they are all played, they are going to be compared to each other when the meta is like up and down here and there, whenever it is. But it's beyond the point to like compare individual characters. I just want to mention that lightning is actually a pretty crowded category at this point if you're just looking for elemental coverage. Quite easy to find. On the flip side, now we shift over to Aventurine side of things. How about Aventurine's alternatives? Everyone keeps talking about like the big, I would say 5 actually, because there's like 5 limited sustains. But really, people talk about Gallagher a lot more nowadays than Luotar. So, but for the sake of respect, I'll just leave him in here as a limited character as well. Out of all these characters, in my opinion, the 2 most versatile, I'm not going to bring in my bias, I'll leave it all the way towards the end of the video if you guys care about that. In my opinion, the 2 most versatile in the current landscape is probably Lingsha and Aventurine. These, why do I say that? Is if you look on the left here, the 3 meta team compositions, Lingsha plays into all of them, Aventurine plays into 2 out of 3 of them. So they are very, very relevant. Huo versus Fucc on the other hand, they are like so-ish in all 3 of them. They're not going to be the top pick, not even your second pick, because these 2 rotate between each other probably for the most part. And then the others like fill in the gaps. But they are decent alternatives altogether. So if you have Fucc, you have Huo, you have Gallagher, they're all going to be like pretty decent picks too. And if you want more like videos comparing between the sustains, if you're like have 1 sustain and try and make your decision for your second one, Aventurine versus the rest, we have other videos like this on the channel, more specific to that. We are just wanting to talk about Acheron versus Aventurine right now. In terms of alternatives, I feel, in my opinion, right now in the game state, I'll give it slightly to Aventurine. He's slightly ahead here in the alternatives category, especially in the current landscape. Right now, we're just talking about the current meta, right? Current landscape of things. Acheron does feel like she's dropping a little bit out of favor, whereas Aventurine still seems like he's going on quite strong, maintaining his position very well. So I'll give it to Aventurine in the alternatives category. Much fewer alternatives to compete with him. But as you know, we talked about one thing a long time for a bit already, and that is current game state. What we need to turn to now is, instead of current, we need to look a bit further right now. We want to look a little bit into our crystal ball here. Of course, anything can happen in the future, but that's what this section aims to do. We want to add in a little bit of intelligent prediction in the long term. You don't want your investment just to be for today. You want to make sure that whatever you put, whatever resource that you spend grows together with your account, so that you don't just like freaking bench your E6 Zila down the road or something like that, right? At the end of the day, Acheron, Aventurine, what are they pulled by? What are the future trends? From what it seems right now, the trend is moving a bit more into the open teams. If we talk about the team compositions right now, there seems to be a little bit more talk and focus about maybe summoners, summon type units, where enemies are going to like summon a lot more units on field, or your teammates summon a lot more units on field. Then characters that can summon get more buffs. You have things like Break is going to be a little bit more focused as well. So that's going to be quite interesting because they might be focusing a little bit onto that aspect. But at the same time, we have a nihility character coming out, which is Fucc Tingyun 5-star as well. So that technically does benefit Acheron in some sense in the near term, in the near future. Is she going to exactly be great for Acheron? At this point, no one really knows, but I would be watching a keen eye out for that for those of you who are looking to pull for Acheron, which is in the second half. So you definitely have access and wait for live stream to get more information. So upsides, between both of them, none of them actually plays into the near-term benefits. Summoners, not really Aventurine. Acheron, not really as well. Break, not really Aventurine. Not so much Acheron as well, unless Tingyun 5-star becomes a super enabler. That Acheron now is able to like do a lot of break, super break and whatever not. But at this near term, can't really tell too much. So between the both of them, it falls in the power creep side of things, right? If we can't see the near term upside and near term whatever not, now we need to turn and look at, how about power creep? Between both of them, Acheron is definitely the one that is going to be power creep a little bit more because she is a DPS in nature. if you have a lot of DPSs in the game, your older ones just fall off the meta, right? No one wants to see 1 million damage when everyone's doing 1 million. You want to see 10 million, you want to see 100 million, and it's very easy, like, just move on there. Aventurine, on the other hand, is a sustained character, and if you notice, Preservation is actually the most rarest space right now with characters, limited characters. In fact, we don't even have a 4-star anymore because March 7 has switched to Hunt, Fire MC has switched to Harmony MC, so all you're left with is no 4 stars in the game, and Hoivers definitely knows that Preservation is probably one of the most rarest sections right now. The question is, are they going to dive deeper into Preservation, make more Preservation units, or perhaps are they just going to ignore it and let this trend continue? I see it as an opportunity, so that is one of the key risks or upsides, depending on how you look at it as well. So Aventurine, sustained defensive character, definitely has a higher longevity. And one of the interesting things that I think Chad was mentioning the other day was perhaps Hoivers might also come in another angle, and that is where we talk about the next section here. Future value, I think is a tie at this point, maybe slightly ahead to Aventurine because he's a more of a sustained character. But one of Chad actually mentioned something very interesting is, what if Hoivers plans to bring in old characters into the game? Make old characters slightly relevant by selling you supports so that you can pull in older characters into the game. Who knows, right? If in that case, you sell the new supports, bring in old characters that are meta, then your older DPSs may not get power creep as fast, so they can still stay kind of relevant as well. And at the same time, you sell tons of support, so you make a lot of money. People that have old characters, their favorites, Imbibitor, Lune, Jingyuan, Zila, hopefully eventually, please, Hoivers, do make Zila meta. And eventually, who knows, maybe if these old characters come out, it will force people spend a bit more money, get the new characters, and then start proceeding on with the game. I think that's very healthy. At least power creep is going to be lesser because you rotate the DPSs in terms of scenarios that they all are unique and they all perform in some way. If that's the case, Zila, I call Acheron Zila. I'm not foreshadowing anything, but Acheron probably is still going to get power creep quite a bit. Whatever trend that we may face, it does seem like DPSs do face a little bit of problems. And one thing I want to mention is, up to this point, we are talking about Acheron as E0, S0, and towards the later part, the free-to-play section, I want to give you a disclaimer to everything we have just mentioned. If you're a person that already has E2, S1, this comparison is at base copy as much as I can, not at higher investments. That is a huge disclaimer that I want to make, but let's proceed. What other things can happen over here? In the potential section, other than what Hoivers wants to do, we also want to talk about something that pushes them forward in terms of lore. Any nihility characters that come into the game that Hoivers wants to add basically benefits Acheron, and the whole nihility aspect of lore and stuff hasn't been delved into too much, so they might go down that road. We don't even have a Harmony Nihility MC yet, so that is a huge upside for Acheron. Whatever Harmony MC, they're just called Harmony Nihility MC. Sheesh. Nihility MC, whatever that is definitely a first thought for Acheron, and that's a huge upside in the slightly near term because we are going to 3.0 and we don't exactly know what's next. The day Nihility comes in, I think that's a tick for Acheron for whatever she does as well. Aventurine, on the other hand, plays into the whole IPC kind of lore kind of push forward. So that is going to be very interesting to see whether, because so far what we've seen, they all kind of work well with each other so far. Topaz and Nambi, Jade, Aventurine, all of them have some sort of follow attacking synergies. So maybe Diamond comes out and whatever other characters. Aventurine might still be relevant because he's so far they only sustain. What if Diamond power creeps him? Because he's supposed to be the Emanator of Preservation, right? Who knows? Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but that's for another point. In terms of potential section, I think the near term looks very exciting for Acheron in terms of an upside for Nihility MC. That is one of my biggest things, but it's a super gray area. Right now, no information, but that's the one thing that I'm looking towards. You could say lore benefits both of them equally, and that's just my personal perspective between both of them. And last section, before I dive into my own personal thoughts here, free-to-play kit. Now, these two characters are very, very different free-to-play kit. Let's just keep it short and sweet, shall we? At E0 S0 is a stomp in the park without any doubt. The clear choice is Aventurine. There's no way Acheron comes close in this category because she is one of the most expensive, most resource-intensive characters, DPS characters in the game. She wants either her signature, she either wants Boundless Courier, which is a limited 4-star light cone, or perhaps Good Night Sleep Well if some of you are looking for some other one. Maybe Resolution, Shines of Pearls of Sweat, whatever not for more niche ones. But there are very few. None? Can I say that? None, no, near to zero free-to-play options light cones available for Acheron, and the damage differential is crazy. Whereas a sustained character like Aventurine, you can work very fine with E0, S0. Preservation has so many decent alternatives, so many different light cones. You even have Trend of Universal Market that can change him into a freaking DOT character as well to play into DOT teams. So very fantastic there already. But at this point, I think it's very unfair to just talk about all of them at E0, S0. I just want to add in a quick, unique part here, which I normally don't do in my investment videos. I want to talk about a unique category here, which is the first time I'm doing this for my videos, and I think it does a lot of justice to Acheron's true value, and that is number 6, category number 6, higher investment, a special that I've never done before. One of the reasons is, as many people already have maybe Acheron, you pulled already Acheron, and at this point, I just call it investon. Interesting. I need to go back to language school over here. But at this point, if you are planning to go for like multiple copies of Acheron, or perhaps you are going for multiple copies of Aventurine, the difference between both of them is extremely massive at this point. And to give it one of the biggest things that I think we need to consider is Acheron's playstyle changes drastically from E2 versus from when she was E0. Because it might sound simple as it is. You take out one nihility character, she only needs to play with one. But that means your team composition flexibility is ridiculous. You can then play into characters like Sparkle for their hyper carry kind of style, which then she does bonkers amounts of damage. You can even play with like Runmei, you can play with like Robin, a lot of very, very meta harmony supports. It taps into an entire roster. Right now, meta, top tier nihility characters, not too much. But harmony characters, plenty. E2 unlocks that for you until the day that we get meta, super god tier supports in the nihility category. Acheron E2 will forever remain very, very relevant for that fact that you can bring in other supports from other factions. E2 S1, very, very strong. If you are talking about all the categories that we talked about previously, I think people with E2 S1 should feel quite comfortable going into 3.X, and that's a huge disclaimer like up to this point. E0 S0, maybe a bit more tricky, and everything we've mentioned up to this point is more mentioned for E0 S0. Aventurine, on the other hand, E1 is also very fantastic, gives him buffing for the entire team, helps him improve skill point efficiency. His S1 turns him to a more damage dealer, which is great as well, very, very strong. But as we always do on this channel, I always say that you don't really need additional Eidolons, additional light cones or signature light cones on sustained characters, because they work so well. Like, Hoivers has designed them already to work so well at E0 S0, so you don't get that huge bump for the high investment section. And so far of all these like 6 category, I think this one I'll give it to Acheron. She's really most impressive out of all the characters that I've pulled so far at high investment. The rest of them, you don't get that huge bump, which unfortunately does make her a little bit of a whalier character. Now, final section here, and if you've been watching till this point, do give us a like, comment, and subscribe for more such future content. We always do this every patch. But my personal bias, and I thought about it long and hard, right? Through the entire video, it is a tricky situation. Who would I advise a new player to get? In my opinion, I think if you are a person that has been playing the game for a really long time, if you are considering picking out a character, I just feel like in my heart somewhere, my option, my main thought process is I plan to skip both. If I don't have any of these, and I don't plan to pull on any of them, like I don't really want to, there is really no need at this point. Currently in the game, we have many alternatives that make do very well, and if you already have some sort of resemblance of a strong team, I don't think that any of them are necessity. Firefly is way cheaper, better investment. You have Rapper, who is also alternatively a decent alternative. You have new meta that's coming out in 3.X, that's coming again that might shake things up. Aventurine is nice, he's really great, but there are a lot of alternatives for much cheaper costs. If I were to if a gun was held in my head and I were to force between choosing one of them, probably my pick, if you were to talk about E0, S0, more people will benefit probably from Aventurine than Acheron at this point because of how cheap Break is to run. Just thinking about the alternatives. But if you are talking about higher investment, if you are a larger spender and you've been playing for a while and you have like some resources saved up, my E0, E2 S1 is carrying my account to this point, so I cannot go without Acheron. In fact, if there was a one character that I would still hyper invest in, like E2 S1 if you consider it hyper, it will still be Acheron, and 2 different options for lower investment, higher investment, and my honest thoughts as well. Maybe I'll just like wait it out. At this point, I highly recommend you check out these 2 other videos we have on the channel, which I think you might like. And thank you guys again so much for watching. See you in the next video.